In this lesson, we're going to show you how to move a character around the screen in preparation for the moving the player around in our project later. The Godot website in the Godot docs is a really helpful resource. If you refer to the Create 2D games in Godot 4.4.1 book by Cool Studios, you'll notice in the beginning section of player movement it references this particular website, and in 2D movement you're going to move a player around. Now, this is a really good website. It's a very first protocol you should look at when you need to learn something new in Godot. Okay, now it's got quite a detailed aspect of what to do here. We've already done the setup in the past, but if you remember, the input map is very important depending on what keys you want to use. Now, these are set up default keys by left, right, up, down and click. Now the click meaning jump. So we're going to leave them for now. You can do this tutorial anytime in the future if you want. We're going to concentrate on player movement for now. You can see here there's a really good example of 8-way movement. So using the arrow keys, you can see it's moving around. Now you can notice there's no actual gravity in this. It's simply moving a player around the screen, and it's perfect for, let's say, top down 2D adventures, or it could be a maze type game where you're traversing the player through a maze. Now you don't need gravity for that, and this particular case is perfect for that. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at the code, and this code is very simple and straightforward. It extends character body 2D, which is any type of player node. The export variable, now we're going to look at that very soon in a particular example. And then the func get input is a function that is self-defined, so your get input is something that we create as a programmer. Then we got the direction, so it's var input direction equals input get vector. In other words, what type of key you're pressing depending on which vectors, X and Y in this particular case. It's a 2D environment. Your 2D is X and Y directions. You've got 4 directions: left, right, up and down. So on one single line you defined all the keys that you want to be able to use to move this particular player around. Okay, and then velocity equals input direction multiplied by speed. Speed we created earlier. Input direction is here. So however fast your speed is set, the faster your player will move. Then we've got a never-ending function against a physics process. So it's a physics process that'll go round and round and round until we finish the actual program. But inside this, we have got a function call get input. You'll notice the brackets as well. We'll reach the line here and then go and get this function here. It will run that function as soon as it sees that line. The move and slide will then move that around, no problem. So this is a really useful way of doing this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy that code by highlighting it with my mouse. Copy that. Now I'm going to create a simple scene inside of Godot. So I'll go to Godot scene, new scene. I'm going to do this as a character body because we're going to move a particular character around. So game node, sorry, other node, I apologize. And then you type in char and character body 2D will come up here. Double click. So character body, and then because we've got good naming conventions, double click, just type it sprite just for now. Sprite player. We're going to create a player in the next video. So it's sprite player. Now inside this you need two things, you remember, a collision shape and a sprite. So add child node. We've already got collision shapes from previous ones, so we double click on that one. Collision shape, we're going to put a rectangular collision shape inside there. The next one is a sprite, so right click, add child node, and then we got sprite 2D, double click that, and then we're ready. So if we want to then drag the default icon, which is in your file system, into the texture of the sprite, we now have a player we can move around. Okay. Now, if we then save this scene, just for now. So save scene in the scenes folder. Now it's time to code. So with the sprite player selected, single click, we're going to sprite player, I'm going to save this inside the scripts folder, don't forget. And then we click create, and then we can paste in the code we just copied from the website. I've already explained how the code works, so there's no need to explain that. If you want to put comments in there for each particular section, that's fine. But I'm going to run that. Now you'll notice it doesn't run because we've used different input mappings from what the project mentioned there. So we're going to change these. So UI underscore to the defaults. So we go UI underscore and then UI underscore and then UI underscore. Now we've actually changed them to be how we want them to be. Now this will be the default situation because they've created the new ones. So we try running that now. We should find that the player runs quite happily around. Now all I'm doing is using my arrow keys, okay? And you'll see the up isn't working still because it's a capital letter. Now that's a good thing that happens because if you use a capital letter, Godot is case sensitive. So it's very important from there. So go to that again. I'm pleased that happened because the case sensitive is very, very important. So I'm clicking the 4 arrow keys, and if I press the up and the right, it moves diagonally. If I press the left and the down, it moves diagonally. So that's right. Now inside here there's no gravity, there's no collision setup, whatever. That's just a great way of and fast way of creating a player that just moves around, and that's really good to see. Now there is also another way we can produce code which is built into Godot. Now this will react to gravity and this type of thing, but it won't do any kind of animation for you. So I'm going to save that scene. I'm going to create another scene. I'll get the test level and get rid of the player from that. So scene, new scene. Again, we're going to make it a character body scene. So we've already used character body 2D, so we can use that from there. Rename this jump player. Now if we just name this player, and then we can put a add child node on it, we can put a collision shape, make it a rectangular, and then if we put a player in there, we put a sprite. Sprite 2D. Okay. And then we can change the collision shape, which is fine. Put the sprite 2D in there. We'll put that in again. Now, you can see what happens because I've named this node a player. Generally, we would have no script on it at all. But Godot has got some pre-defined code that we can use for this. So because we name this player and we go on to create a new script. Okay. Now, if we put the template on and then we put character body movement, go to create, you'll notice this code has automatically been generated for us. Now it's almost identical to the code that we will be using in the next video to move a player around the screen. But what this doesn't have is code to animate the player. So, but it will act with gravity. So we've got gravity in here, exactly the same type of thing. And then we can put the actual movement in as we go along. Now, the accept key is the enter key. Now I want to change that back to up. Okay. Now when we run this and test it, the player will just fall. So I'll save that first. Because we've already got a player scene earlier, I don't want to actually. I'm going to rename that to player 2 scene. And we test that. You can see the player just drops. Now if we want to actually test that, we created a test scene previously, but I'll just do another one to revise this. So I'm going to go to scene, new scene. We're going to make this a 2D scene, and we're going to play. We're going to name this to be test 2 because we've already got test 1, I think it is. So that's now created. If I click on back to the 2D node, you can see here I'm going to click and put a ground scene in there. So put a ground scene inside there. Again, we can move that around with the arrow keys, and then we can bring in the player 2 scene we just created earlier. So drag that into test 2. Okay. And we can move that player around to be roughly on the ground. If we test this now, now you'll notice that it fell through because we forgot to do one simple thing, and that was back into player 2 we forgot to reset the collision shape. But this shows exactly what can happen because the collision shape here is very small. So we go to collision shape. We need to resize this collision shape so it's the size of the player. Now we'd already done this when we created the original player scene, but this is just a demonstration now to do player movement. So we can save that, and because we're saving it in here, when we run the test program again, it'll recognize and know exactly where that is. So if I press the up arrow key, it'll jump. If I press the left arrow key and right arrow keys together, they move, and you can see it'll jump horizontally as well. So that is how to create a template player movement. So now we've got a player movement which uses normal player movement based on the website we've seen earlier. So you can see we've done this one here, and then we've also used the Godot player movement template. In the next video I'll show you how to include the animation that we created earlier on the moving player. I'll see you then.